Hello! Welcome to my very first video ever. This video is just going to be me drawing some characters from Treasure Planet. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit since it's my first video, and I'm going to give a couple drawing tips, specifically tips about using references and drawing likenesses of faces. So, just a brief little introduction. Hi, I'm Molly. I'm a artist. I work as a tattoo artist in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I basically just do art all the time. That's my main thing. I've actually wanted to start a YouTube channel for quite a while, but I just never felt like I had the time or energy to do it. But over the past year, my shop has been closed quite a bit, so I haven't been able to tattoo as much because of COVID. So I'm taking this opportunity to make some videos and try something new. I won't go on about myself for too long, but I've been drawing for probably 25 plus years, pretty much my whole life, and I've been tattooing for about 8 years now. And for the past 2 of those 8 years, I have owned my own tattoo studio in Toronto. It's called The Rabbit and the Thorn, if you're interested in checking it out. But I can talk more about tattooing in the future. I'm planning to sort of mix it up with some videos with pure drawing content and some of them that are a little bit more tattoo industry focused. So I'm sure we'll chat more about tattooing at some point. But for today, I figured just a little brief introduction so you have some idea of whose hands you're staring at for the next 20 minutes. So yeah, that's it about me. Let's get into some drawing stuff. So yeah, if you haven't seen Treasure Planet, then you are not living your life to the fullest. Go out right now and watch it. It's definitely on Disney Plus, but I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. It is worth your time, I promise you. And you know what? If you have seen Treasure Planet already, this is your sign to go watch it again. It holds up in adult life. It is by far one of the most underrated Disney movies and has some of the most underrated Disney characters. The characters in this movie are so fun to draw. They have the weirdest faces. Everyone's kind of a human, but kind of an alien. It's really great. I'm all about it, and I had a lot of fun doing these drawings. So yeah, my very first tip is actually my absolute secret weapon for drawing practice. Specifically practicing drawing expressions, facial poses, different angles of faces. I discovered this website a few years ago and I have used it hundreds of times. I have really found that drawing from animation can be incredibly helpful for improving your skills when it comes to using a reference. Using a reference is something that can be really daunting to people. I think there's this feeling that the image that you draw has to look exactly like the reference. And a lot of the time that's not true. A lot of the time a reference can just help you figure out proportion, it can help you figure out positioning or angles, and the finished product doesn't have to look exactly like the reference. This is often true in tattoo work. I will very often use references and the finished drawing looks nothing like the reference other than the pose or the angle of the head. But sometimes you want to look at a reference and draw an exact copy, whether it be a Disney character or someone's grandma or your own face. And like with anything else in drawing, the best way to get better at it is just to practice. But it can be challenging to find consistent reference pictures. Mostly what I'm talking about is finding multiple reference pictures of the same person so that you can practice, drawing a likeness of that person at different angles. And so I present to you my secret weapon for finding reference images. It is a website called animationscreencaps.com. What this is it's a big database of animated movies, all the Disney movies, but also, some DreamWorks, some Don Bluth titles, a whole bunch of stuff. And the amazing people who made this website have posted these movies frame by frame. So you can go through and find every single facial expression from a whole movie's worth of a character. It is what I used to find the reference images for these characters. You can see in that first image of Dr. Wow, what is that guy's name? It's Dr. something. The Doctor. I just went to animationscreencaps.com. I found a scene where he was speaking with someone and found just a face that I liked. And I went from there. And honestly, it makes reference practice so enjoyable, makes it so easy. And the nice thing about animation references versus, let's say, a real photo of someone is the expressions are always a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more clear as well, because they're really trying to portray an emotion. And so I find that it is the best practice for improving your ability to look at a reference and copy it to a page. And, I've been doing this for a few years now, so it's definitely gotten a bit easier for me. Also, this video is sped up to almost 200%, so the actual process is a bit slower than what you're seeing, but it does get easier the more you practice, and using screen caps from your favorite movies is just a fun and easy way to get that practice in, and I highly recommend it. So we'll get into another tip now as I'm getting into this next character. This is the main character's mom. Her name... Oh my god, I'm going to go through this whole video and not be able to tell you the names of any of the characters. I feel like it starts with an M, but is that because she's somebody's mom? I have no idea. We're just going to call her the mom. So I got into drawing this mom, and honestly, it was going pretty smoothly until I got to her eyes. And you can see I've already erased them a couple times and tried to draw them back in. I was just really struggling getting her eyes where they needed to be. Which brings us to my next tip for improving your drawings of human faces or likenesses from references, which is, first things first, lay down an eye line. I did not do that for this drawing, and there I go again, erasing and struggling because I cannot figure out where her eyes are pointing, where they're sitting. It can make your life so difficult, and getting the eyes wrong is something that will mess up the whole drawing. Like, truly, the whole face could be perfect, but if the eyes are a little bit wrong, that will not look like the person you're trying to make it look like. Honestly, the simplest way to lay out your eye line is to draw a crosshairs across the whole face. You might have seen this in like simple drawing tutorials. Usually when you lay out a face, you lay out the middle line down the bridge of the nose, and then there's a cross line for the eyes, a cross line for the mouth, etc. But something else that you can do is using that cross line for the eyes as the horizontal line. You can go into each eye and add an additional vertical, so 2 smaller crosshairs, and adjust those before you try to draw in the pupils so that you're not just constantly drawing the pupils wrong and having to go back and erase and try again. You honestly won't see me do it in this drawing because I was convinced that I could just make it work, and it led to me having to redraw the eyes about 5 times. So please take my advice and try to lay down your eye line before you get too involved in the actual eyeballs. It'll make your life so much easier. So I'm just continuing with her little bonnet. I've honestly left the eyes alone for a minute, as you can see, because I got so frustrated drawing and redrawing the pupils. Which, you know what, brings me to another tip that I have. I think there can be this sense when you're drawing that erasing is this super final act. Like, oh, I've messed up. I need to erase all evidence of my failure and these ugly eyes that I've drawn. But I will offer you an alternative piece of advice, which is sometimes erasing is as powerful a tool as drawing. And my recommendation is something that I have started in my own head to call ghost erasing, which is basically lightly erasing. So you go back to a spot that's not looking right and just erase enough that the main pencil is gone, but you can still see sort of a ghosty underline of what used to be there. And the reason that that can be so helpful is you don't end up making a complete mess of your page by just piling pencil on top of pencil on top of pencil, but you also don't have to start from scratch if you mess something up. So as you can see, like with her little ponytail, it wasn't quite right, but it was close to right. So I just lightly erased over top, left this sort of ghostly underline to remind myself of the general area where the ponytail should be. And then I went back with a cleaner line and fixed it up. And it's a way quicker process than if you get halfway into a drawing and you realize that you've made a mistake and you just erase feverishly and you try to start from scratch. Because honestly, starting from scratch is the hardest part of drawing. Starting with a blank page and having to figure out the layout of the whole thing is the most difficult part of a drawing. So once you have some shapes down and some lines down, even if they're the wrong shapes, they can help you figure out what the right shapes are, and they can make your life a lot easier. So to sum it up, my advice is never erase fully, but erase lightly and, use layering to your advantage. Use your old lines to inform your newer lines, and you might find that it speeds up your drawing process a little bit. I'm realizing as I'm watching this video back that I don't even really know if I ever got her eyes right. They look a little bit weird to me, but you know what? I think I did okay for the fact that I was like really avoiding my own drawing tips and just going for it. And also too, I really do think it's sometimes hard to see the drawing in the video versus in real life. It's like looking at your face in a mirror. It always looks a little bit weirder than you think it does. But now I'm on to the next character, and you're in for a big surprise because I actually know the name of this character. I'm now drawing Captain Amelia, and I think I know her name because she's by far the best character in this movie, and it would be a shame if I didn't remember her name in the back of my brain for my whole life. So this is Captain Amelia. Honestly, I really struggled drawing her. She has a very cat-like kind of alien face, and it was throwing me off. Her, all the shapes of everything in her face are not quite how you expect them to be if you're thinking about human anatomy. And that brings me to my next bit of advice, which is balancing out the work that your eyes are doing versus the work that your brain is doing. I feel like that sounds weird if you don't really know the concept of what I'm talking about. Basically, what I mean is when you're drawing, your eyes and your brain are working together to understand the image that you're creating. Especially when you're using a reference, your eyes are often giving you one piece of information, and your brain and what it knows about drawing, knows about anatomy, is giving you different information. And if you're drawing from your imagination, it's not as much of a big deal if you mess with anatomy or you mess with perspective. But when you're drawing from a reference and trying to create something that is real, something that actually exists, it's important for you to remember how anatomy works and, how a head is connected to a neck and how a neck is connected to shoulders and et cetera, et cetera. So you can see in this drawing, I really struggled with getting that anatomy to work with my knowledge of how humans are supposed to be put together and what I was looking at, which is a cat alien woman. So my real advice is, stock up on that anatomy knowledge. Do some research into human anatomy or animal anatomy or perspective or whatever it is that you're interested in drawing. Do a little research on how to draw that thing, but then also go in and do some reference drawings and let your eyes inform you. Work on getting your eyes and your brain to work together, because the best drawings, in my opinion, draw information from both a visual reference and knowledge that you already have. But yeah, I honestly really did struggle with Amelia, even though I took my time and was trying to work with my own anatomy knowledge. It was just a bit of a struggle. I chose a little bit of an odd angle, and she's an odd looking character, and I think I managed it in the end. But sometimes it's just hard. Sometimes, you can be drawing for 45 minutes and the first 40 minutes goes easily, and then right at the end, you hit a bit of a snag. And just don't be too hard on yourself. Just remember you're just drawing cat aliens, and it's not a life or death situation, hopefully. So yeah, I'm just finishing up Amelia, and I just wanted to give one last tip for drawing from a reference, something that I have found really helpful in my own reference drawing. And that is using the negative space to your advantage. So you might have noticed when I was drawing Amelia, I ended up having to go back and erase half of her jawline and redraw it in a completely different shape because I just had it wrong. And I didn't realize that I had it wrong until I was drawing her mouth, and it was way closer to the chin than it was in the reference. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about negative space, is look at all the shapes and how they relate to each other, whether it be the actual negative space, like the space between the edge of her hair and the top of her shoulder, or whether it's just the way that the shapes in the drawing relate to each other. So like I said, the distance between the bottom lip and the chin, or the distance between her bangs and her ears, or, the edge of a hat and the edge of a hairline. All of those sort of distance comparisons and shape comparisons will help you improve your ability to copy a likeness. And used in conjunction with some of the other tips that I've given, it can really make your life a little bit easier when you're drawing from a reference. So, for example, lay down the basics of the face, get the shape of the jaw on there, get the eye shapes and all the little bits kind of laid out, and then go back and compare the negative spaces and compare the way that the shapes relate to each other. Is that nose too long? Is the space between her eyes the same as the space that I'm seeing in the reference? And if it's not, then do some light erasing and remember sort of your base face that you created and make alterations that take the negative spaces into account. And, with a little bit of practice, you'll find that this is a really quick way to lay down a very convincing face. I will say that as I'm talking confidently about convincing faces, I am entering the worst part of this drawing, which is when I tried to draw the robot, who I think his name is Ben. Honestly, this whole video has just been me not really knowing who I'm drawing, but that's fine. I think this is Ben. He is a full robot. He has almost no human attributes other than, he's got eyes and a mouth and a neck. and I really struggled with drawing this guy. To be fair, I picked a reference image where he was very small in the image, and that was probably not the best choice. It was a little harder to see some of the like mechanical details going on in his mouth and neck. So I made it harder than it had to be for myself. But I did my best, and I keep these sort of drawing rules in my head as I'm drawing. And I a couple times go back and lightly erase some stuff and try to deal with the negative space inconsistencies and lay some stuff down better. But he just ends up a little bit wonky. So, I hope that all of these drawing tips are helpful to you. But at the end of the day, sometimes the drawing is just going to not turn out how you want it to. And that's just part of the process. Sometimes you just have to leave a weird, wonky robot at the top of your page and call it a day. So yeah, I'm finishing up here. I do Ben's face, and then I do a little morph at the bottom who's just kind of a blob guy. And that's about it. Thank you so much for tuning in to my first ever YouTube video. I'm going to have another one up in a couple of days. I think that I'm going to try to sort of alternate between traditional drawing and digital drawing, regular information and tattoo specific information. I'm just really excited to share some of the stuff that I do all the time, every day, and some of the thought processes and things that I've learned for myself during my very lifelong art career. So yeah, if you're looking for more of my work, there's links to my website and my Instagram in the description or on my channel. I hope that I will see everyone again for my next video, and I hope that you go watch Treasure Planet and maybe draw some aliens. Thanks again, and have a good one.